Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dreamleapers with Harriet Cole. You know, I always bring the best guests to you, people who inspire me, and therefore I believe they will inspire you too. My guest this week is someone I have known since the beginning of his career. We worked together at the very beginning of his career when I was at Essence Magazine. And over the years, our paths have intersected in so many different ways. Today, I've brought him on because this is Pride Month. This is the time when we are celebrating our brothers and sisters and them in the LGBTQ world. And he has dedicated a huge part of his career to uplifting, in particular, Black men. He is Emil Wilbekin. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He is a seasoned journalist, media executive, and he's the founder of Native Son, which is an inspirational platform that he created to empower and amplify the voice and visibility of Black, gay, and queer men. And he just finished having his 7th annual Native Son Awards, and I invited him to come in and talk to us all about it. So please join me in welcoming Emil Wilbekin.
Hi, Harriet.
I'm so proud of you, first of all, Emil. I mean,
Oh,
when we look at people's careers and just see
mm,
the trajectory, you have been very intentional throughout your career in, celebrating the ways in which we live, bringing beauty into our world from fashion and lifestyle, but also, in a much meatier way, just in the who we are and being
yes,
able to honor who we are. This being Pride Month, this is a time when many people are shining a lens on folks in the LGBTQ community. And, that lens looks a lot of different ways. There's celebrations and there's also a lot of work to be done.
that's right.
Uh, but you started Native Son. Is it 7 years ago that you started, or 7 years that we've had the awards?
I started Native Son 7 years ago,
Mhm.
and that was our sixth award. We took one
Wow.
year off. So yeah, but 7 years ago I started Native Son after I left Essence.
Right. So since we share Essence also, what was your role at Essence when you were there? This at least that time.
Yes, that's on. So my role at Essence, I started as the managing editor of Essence.com to bring life and kind of energy, young energy, to the website because the magazine was considered legacy, and a lot of people thought, well, it's for my mom, it's for my aunties, it's not
Right.
for me. So they brought me in to make it youthful, to make it more aligned with what was happening in pop culture and music and fashion and style. And so I did that for 2.5 years until they realized that I had a lot of friends who were celebrities and publicists and media folks. And after Mickey Taylor left, I was able to work on the covers. I can never ever say I filled Mickey's position because that's
No,
not
no,
possible
that's
ever.
Elaine. There's like a statue acknowledging Mickey, but the cover still had to be made.
Yes. So they had me book the covers, oversee the covers, and celebrity talent across the whole brand. So I got to touch the music festival, Black Women in Hollywood, which is important to this conversation, Black Women in Music, and the other, digital exclusives and so forth. If someone was pregnant, if someone was getting married, celebrity wise, I would book that stuff for the magazine and for the
Mhm.
brand.
And so you did that for a while, which was very exciting.
Mhm.
And exciting. What year was it when you came in to work with the website?
I started in 2009.
So that's important too for people
Mhm.
for context.
Yes.
Time moves so fast these days that you don't even realize the impact of what something means. So in 2009,
Mhm.
magazine websites were still pretty new.
Yes.
It was especially in Black media. So,
Mhm.
trying to build a footprint also for while you were editorial on the business side, they were still trying to figure out how could it make money,
Yes. Yeah.
and for a legacy brand, always trying to figure out how to reach the next generation.
That's
And
right.
and so you were brought in and successfully did that and then
Mhm.
expanded your reach further. You
Yeah.
said that the Black women in Hollywood became important to this conversation. How so?
So one of the things that I experienced at Essence was being, one of the few men that worked at the brand and being there, I really would sit in these rooms with all these amazing, powerful, inspirational Black women and see them celebrated and see how Essence as a community uplifted and celebrated other Black women. And as I would sit in those rooms, there was kind of like an aching in me that wanted that for myself, that wanted that for my community as a Black gay man. And I worked on Black women in Hollywood, at first digitally, and then later, obviously, booking talent. And that room was always so special to me. It was a gift, and I remember one year I was sitting there watching and I thought, I want to create this or something like this for the Black gay community. And so Essence Black Women in Hollywood was really, really inspirational, specifically to the Native Son Awards. My experience at Essence overall was very inspirational to me starting the Native Son movement, community, and platform because I had evidence, right? I could see what that looked like and how powerful it was for Black women to be in community, to be in fellowship, to be aligned, and to love on each other.
Hmm. Yep. That is the experience. I was at Essence for many years, and I remember Susan Taylor. I mean, part of the DNA was
Mhm.
that we were to be in sisterhood with each other and
Yeah.
to support each other in all of the iterations that we could
Mhm.
be. And when you think of Black gay men in
Yes.
particular, first of all, Black men, period.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
you can be whatever you are,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Black and male, it's an endangered species. And
That's
then
right.
Black gay men,
Hmm.
an even more endangered species. I've heard so many stories of people, especially during their growing up years,
Hmm.
where somebody was criticizing them, somebody was
Hmm.
maligning them. Sometimes it would be even people who hadn't figured out their sexuality yet,
That's right.
who
Yeah.
were pointing the finger at somebody who might
Hmm.
be more obviously different.
Right.
Um, we hear these stories of pain. We don't
Hmm.
hear so often stories of fellowship, of brotherhood. So
Right.
when you decided to create Native Sown, what was your intention?
So the initial intention was that I thought about how much privilege I had been given as an openly Black gay man, that I was editor in chief of Vibe magazine and won the National Magazine Award and was working in, Black music, hip hop, Black Hollywood, fashion, all these spaces, and able to be my true, authentic self. I realized that that was a privilege, though, that a lot of Black, gay, and queer men in my community don't have, particularly in the South. And a lot of our community kind of live what we would say in the closet because they're not comfortable to be their full selves at work, or sometimes it's dangerous in their communities. And this is, be like at the beginning of marriage equality, and this is, the rules and laws have changed a lot since I actually started Native
Right.
Son. But something that you're kind of pointing to that I think is really important about my initial intention was creating fellowship,
Mhm.
creating a mirror of each other, right? So that as in a brotherhood, we could be reflections of ourselves and see the best part of ourselves, but also to heal the wounded and broken parts. And one of the things that, I'm so glad you brought up the Black male part,
Yeah,
because we specifically, as Native Son, live at the intersection of our Blackness and our queerness. And
yeah,
so everything that impacts Black men, from health, employment challenges, systemic racism, structural racism, health, all of those things impact us as Black, gay, and queer men. We then have the other issues around our queerness and acceptance and shame and stigma in the Black church, or HIV and AIDS numbers that we have to carry as well.
I do a lot of work with AARP, and they did a study some years ago. I don't know when it was most recently updated, but looking at the challenges that Black gay men have as they age and how the healthcare system treats them. And I was I mean, you don't think you'll be shocked anymore in this
Yeah.
year or in recent years, but when people find that they need to live in assisted living or any kind of
Mhm.
retirement community, many people who had been openly themselves
Mhm.
feel like they have to go back in the closet in order to get health care. People
Mhm.
who are out
Mhm.
going into these spaces often don't receive the same kind of attention, almost like it was in the early days of HIV/AIDS,
Mhm.
when what happened was medical professionals would feel afraid to touch somebody.
Mhm.
This study said that that still happens today. That today, all that we know
Mhm.
about how to protect yourself and be careful and blah, all of that
Mhm.
kinda goes out the window, and these judgments that are like judgments from yesteryear come back in and make people afraid to fully live in their older years.
Mhm. And I think it's very aligned with the Black community overall. I mean, we hear the
Yes,
stories about what happens with Black women, right? With when they're having babies, when
yes,
they are in pain, and the doctors, that you have a higher threshold for pain, you're fine. It's the
yes,
same things. I mean, you think about all those stories, it's the same that we experience. I think the difference for LGBTQ folks is that there are very specific needs. There are things that need to be checked on, that it's hard to get HIV and AIDS testing, or to get on PrEP, which is something that, will help protect you from HIV when you live in a small town or a rural area, and
yes.
you go into the clinic and your auntie is the reception, or your sister's best friend, and that scares people, right? So that access to healthcare in a safe space is really, really challenging for our community. And we see that across the board, not just for Black gay men, but for lesbian, trans, and other non binary folks as well.
That's such a good point. I mean, we have the, privilege, as you say, of living in New York
Mhm.
City,
Mhm.
where I'm even gonna say it's the big neighborhoods in New York City. Because if you go to the perimeter, the same thing is true. It depends upon where you are,
It depends,
how
yeah, and who your doctor and your healthcare, right?
it really does, how you are welcomed and or
Mhm.
judged, which seems just unbelievable in some
Mhm.
senses, and yes, and yet it's still true, which is why it's important, that you created Native Son is so important because it's amplifying the voices and the stories
Mhm.
of, Black, gay, and queer men in this community to let
Yeah.
them know that they're seen and valued. Now, something that you did that, we were well, I'll say I was and others were singing your praises for
Mhm.
inviting our brother Don Lemon
Mm.
to be the host. And I know he was involved from the earliest of days
Mhm.
with,
Mhm.
Native Son, but, context, Don Lemon, who was on CNN for most of his career,
Mhm.
was recently let go unceremoniously, and we still don't understand the reasons behind that, although the big boss was let go too, so there's definitely proof that there was more happening over there than just what was happening with Don.
That's
But for
right.
you to bring him in to be the host was really lovely, and I'd just like you to talk about him for a
Sure.
moment. Talk about Don and what he means to you and to Native Son
Mhm.
being a voice for this community.
So, roads lead to Essence. I have to say.
They do for us.
It does, right. So for me, Don Lemon, obviously I knew him before I was at Essence, but Essence at the time was owned by Time Inc., which was part of Time Warner, which CNN, where he worked, was part of Time Warner at that time. And Don was coming out in his book, Transparent, and Essence wanted to do a big feature on him, and he was uncomfortable. And he reached out to me and he mentioned us at the awards because he was the only person I was the only person that he knew in media who was out that he could use as a reference and as an example of what it was like to be out loud and proud at work in a media organization. And so he came to me to get guidance, and that was a very, very powerful moment for me because it kind of defined my place in the world, but also for him because he just needed someone that he could confide in, talk to, get guidance for. And so that's where our relationship kind of really began. And then when I launched Native Son many years later, and I was trying to figure out, well, who should we honor? I
Mhm.
couldn't think of anyone else in media but Don because he, arguably gay or straight, is one of the most visible Black men
That's
in
right.
media, period. And so what he means to the Black community, and then what he means to the LGBTQ plus community, but what he means to Native Son is that he's ours. And so I think that that was really important. So we honored him. And I remember he said yes. I explained what Native Son was, what my idea around it was, and he said yes. And so when I saw the news on CNN and we were planning the awards, I thought, we got to bring Don home. And we are,
Yeah.
like, y'all can, because the thing about it is it's an example, right? A, we love Don Lemon and for his candor, for his excellence in journalism. I mean, really,
Yeah.
truly. And if you look back at most of the major stories within the last 15 years, we experience Black, white, and otherwise with Don Lemon.
Yep.
And so it just made a lot of sense. So I called him to check on him first
Yep.
to make sure he was good. And then I asked him, and I said, I have kind of a weird question for you. And he said, and then I said, would you host the Native Son Awards? He said, but why is that weird? And that's what I love about Don.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is really important, aside from bringing him home and making sure that he knew that he's supported and loved and we're in solidarity with him, is that what happened to Don could happen to any of us, right? A
Mhm.
lot of the community, particularly at the Native Son Awards, are Black, gay professional men who work in the C suite, who are business people. And that can happen to any of us. We can be unceremoniously released from our job without cause, like
Indeed.
that.
That is so true. And just, for anybody who is paying attention to this broadcast right now, I do want to acknowledge Don Lemon did say something that some call misogynistic and
Yeah.
ageism, about women, and he apologized. So what he said
Mhm.
wasn't good. That's not
Mhm.
the first time he said something that wasn't good, by the way. Anybody who's in the media, anybody in the world says things that aren't good sometimes. We do. In this age of social media, it doesn't even have to be that you're on TV. It could just be that you said it.
Yeah.
I'm not excusing it. Don said something that he shouldn't have said, but he apologized very publicly.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that for whatever the reasons, and we may never know what they are, that he wasn't forgiven. You
Right.
know, that's what I do think that forgiveness is really important in life.
Mhm.
And I'm so happy that you saw past whatever that was. And, like, well, we
Mhm.
celebrate Don for all of these reasons,
Mhm.
especially his authenticity. But
That's
let's
right.
talk for a minute, Emil, because you've had a long career, as have I, as has Don,
Mhm.
about this concept of forgiveness.
Mm.
And what does that mean
Mhm.
in life?
Mm,
when seriously, I mean, and I'm
mm,
asking it
mm,
just, from a soul perspective, like,
mhm,
how do we move forward in life
mhm,
when for many people it's not given?
mm, mm. Well, I think about none of us are perfect, right? And so I think people have judgment lapses, they make mistakes. I think people often, sometimes it's not on purpose either, it just happens. People aren't thinking. But I think we all make mistakes. And so, how do we um, move on? And I know a lot of, in my church and a lot of my mindfulness work that I do for myself, and even in therapy, talking about carrying the burden of not forgiving someone. It's more of a burden on you than it is actually on the other person. And, I'm Christian, so I'm, about the life of forgiveness, right? And I think about, I always try to think, Pastor Mike at First Corinthian Baptist Church, we always talk about kind of following the carpenter. And
Mm,
are you doing your best to act like Christ, right? And so
yes.
forgiveness is really, really important. And I think it doesn't always happen in corporate spaces. And it definitely is challenging in this whole council culture that we're living in right now.
Yes.
There's not a lack of there's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is grace is not given all the time. And I think that that's something we've lost as a community. And I think that's part of bringing it back to native son that's really important, because there's a lot of healing that needs to be done from people who raised us that were not prepared to raise children that were gender nonconforming.
Mm,
They A lot of forgiveness for people that maybe have used their privilege of power and sexual misconduct,
mm.
which has happened a lot. And then there's a lot around the Black church, right? There's a lot of hurt within the Black, gay, and queer community and LGBT community around church hurt, because a lot of the dogma that's used in the church has been used to alienate the LGBTQ plus community. Again, back to our intersection of our Blackness and our gayness or queerness, it's deeply hurtful not to have a place to worship, not to have a place of fellowship, not to have a place to praise.
I recently read Billy Porter's memoir,
Mm, mm,
which is kind of heartbreaking. I mean, you can't even
mm,
imagine that this man is who he is based upon reading his book, right? But he talks about his mother, who was so deeply entrenched in the church, and how the church at every turn just slapped him around and did
mhm,
not respect him. It's really tough to step into your full self when you have faith and your
mhm.
faith community summarily rejects you.
Yes, yes, and that's a lot of the trauma that we deal with. I mean, I am so, so fortunate that I go to a very
Mhm.
affirming church and that I can show up as my full self, and I'm welcome. Not only am I welcome, I'm asked to serve, right? I'm
Yeah,
asked to
and to be
participate,
a
and
face of, right.
yeah, to be a face of. And one of the most powerful moments was when Pastor Michael A. Walren Jr. asked me to sit on the altar with him for a conversation called The Journey, and talk to him about my experience at Vibe, my experience in creating Native Son, my experience with living with HIV, all these different things on the altar of the church.
Which okay, everybody, I want you to really, really take that in because, Emil, when HIV first came on the scene and, for a
Mhm,
good 20 years after, the
mhm,
Black church was so slow to come to the table. I mean, some of our
mhm,
biggest, church leaders, Black church leaders would not have conversations at their annual conferences about
mhm,
HIV. It was literally in the closet, even
mhm.
though it was affecting at first Black men, and then even up to this day, the highest numbers are Black women, right?
Yeah.
So forget having somebody come on stage and sit with the pastor. to talk about it. That's huge. And
Revolutionary.
revolutionary. What was the impact that
Mm.
your talking about this had on the congregation?
So that it was really quite phenomenal. It was a moment in the church. For me, I was very tense about it, but my spirit was like, keep going. Um, the women in the church responded really powerfully to it. Many of them felt an analogy to my story of living with HIV, with their own living with disease, and how people maybe had shunned them or shamed them. There were other families and elderly folks who had lost people from the AIDS crisis, and so that was very affirming for them. And then there's young people, and there were young people, like I literally meet people all the time who were there that Sunday, and what that testimony, what my testimony meant to them, was a lot. You know, I got a note from Thelma Golden, who is the chief curator of the Studio Museum in Harlem, and she was streaming that day. And she sent me a note and said, you don't know the impact that you're having on young Black boys in the Harlem community for them to be able to see you and hear you speak with such clarity and confidence and authority.
Mm, that's powerful. So let's talk about that for a moment, because when I remember, I say I've had 39 lives. So in the early days, I was a model, and I remember it still at Howard University, and many people in my community suddenly were dropping. This is in the early
Mhm,
80s.
mhm,
And I was like, "Oh my God, what's happening?" We didn't know what it was. We
mhm.
just had no idea what HIV was. And for many years, HIV was an absolute death sentence.
Right.
And so people did not talk about it. They did not tell anybody. It has changed so much. Thank God for all the meds the science that has made it possible for
Right.
people to live. When you were diagnosed,
Mhm,
how long ago was that? And
mhm.
what was our world like at that point? What was survival like when you were diagnosed?
Sure. So I literally just did the math the other day for a essay that I'm working on. And so I was diagnosed 26 years ago.
Wow.
And
It was still danger zone time.
yeah, it was. Um, luckily, so the times it was danger zone time, but they had definitely learned to level out people dying based on medication, and the medication wasn't as harsh
Good,
as
yeah.
it had been because in the early days, the medicine was what was killing people.
Right.
It wasn't the disease. The medicine was so strong to try to combat the HIV virus that it was actually killing people's organs and stuff like that. So when I contracted HIV, um, they were down to one pill a day, which was
Mhm.
really kind of revolutionary. But it was still in a time where a lot of people, especially in the Black community, were not accepting of it. Um,
Absolutely.
in the church, not accepting of it. In the community, and you had the whole DL culture happening. So that's the down low culture of men who were not being disclosing their sexuality and were living with HIV and AIDS and were afraid to be out about their sexual identity and definitely about being HIV positive. I think that stigma that still exists today. I
Sure.
think that that's still a challenge. But for me, because I want to shift it out of the
Yeah.
trauma a little bit,
Right, right.
is that for me, that was a real wake up call. And I think that was a part of why I do the work that I do. I wanted to be able to make a difference for my community so that they wouldn't have to go through what I was going through and that they would think highly of themselves and more of themselves to protect themselves and take care of themselves.
And the fact that you had the courage to say your status whenever you decided to do that,
Mhm,
certainly has had a huge impact, because you are highly regarded, and
mhm,
for you to, A, believe your career would still be
mhm,
intact, because again, you work for Essence. Essence is a conservative Black woman's
Mhm.
publication. It is.
Mhm. Yeah.
It is. And, for you to make the choices to be yourself and work in
Mhm.
spaces where you could have been judged
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
very courageous.
Yeah, but, the thing is, I did it honestly I came out about my HIV status at the very first Native Son Awards in 2016, and that is really important because I hadn't thought about it. My friends knew, I was kind of public within my own circle and my own bubble, but I realized, like, you're starting this organization, this
Yeah.
community, this movement, and based on the CDC numbers that 1 in 2 Black men who have sex with men are gonna contract HIV in their lifetime, so that would mean if the first awards were 50 people, so that means 25 potentially are HIV positive or living with AIDS in the room, and I had this epiphany, and I talked to my team, and I was like, "Oh, y'all, I need to come out about my HIV status at the awards." So then it was like, okay, so what does that look like from a career perspective? What does that look like from a press perspective? At the time, I hadn't told my mother,
Wow.
and I was just like kind of terrified, but I knew it was part of the journey and I needed to do that. And so I announced it during this kind of speech that I was giving at the awards, and it just rolled out of my mouth like it was
It was
effortless.
time.
But what was interesting was a lot of people in the room did not know. So there was this kind of gasp, and there were people in the room like Billy Porter, who didn't come out till recently about
Right.
his status, who witnessed that moment, and several other of my friends who have recently come out, and they said, "That night when you spoke your truth, I wanted to have the courage to be able to speak my truth."
Wow.
The other piece that was interesting was some of the women that were helping me with the project said that I was joyful when I said it.
Mm.
And so that has been a really important part of kind of normalizing, right, who we are. And also like to not have shackles on that are weighing us down, but to actually speak our truth, tell our truth, and walk in our truth and be free and joyful.
And we're so grateful, that I don't know whether you thought of this when you were growing up, but you become like this editorial warrior. Well,
Yes.
it is. So, I mean,
It
you are
is.
you have never been afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
And that's courageous, and it counts
Mhm.
for a lot. And so now so let us just acknowledge that. I don't wanna just
Thank
brush
you.
past
No,
that.
I receive it. I receive it, and I think because I've been getting a lot of comments from this awards, and people are like, "No, thank you for speaking up and always
Yeah,
challenging, um, the status quo and really fighting for the Black community," and
yes.
then pivoting now to expand that to include the Black gay and queer community, which will then turn to the Black LGBTQ plus community.
Absolutely, and the thing is, we talk about lots of things. That's why, like, today, I was like, "This is what we're gonna talk about,"
Yes,
because there's so many things that we can talk about,
yes.
and we do. This is an ongoing conversation, but in this
Mhm.
case, it's so important, and I want you to tell us about the people who you honored this
Yes.
year, because they're you honored couples in the community, which is lovely. Now we can honor
Mhm.
couples and celebrate them,
Yes, yes.
and these dynamic people who are doing wonderful things. So tell us about them.
So, really interesting, when we're choosing who to honor at the Native Son Awards because this is a new platform. There's so many men who have been ignored or are in the margins who have done tremendous groundbreaking work. So, one of the things I try to think about is what is their impact now? And then also, what is their kind of career trajectory and impact that they've had? So it was really wonderful that this year we had 3 couples being honored. Black gay love is a huge, huge tent pole for Native sons. So it was really, really important that we recognize that and honor that. But staying on the line of HIV and AIDS, we on and faith, we honored Rashad Burgess, who is head of Black Health and Equity at Gilead Sciences, which is a big pharmaceutical company, and a lot of his work centers HIV and AIDS. And he's been an advocate since the AIDS crisis around helping the Black community fight the virus and
Yeah,
also sustain themselves. And then his partner is Bishop O.C. Allen, who is the head of the Vision Church in Atlanta, which is a affirming, gender neutral church. And I just thought, you know, the times that we're living in are so challenging. And here's this couple, and they have two beautiful children, and they really represent kind of the dream for a lot of the Native sons, right?
yes,
They're both successful, they're equally yoked, they've got kids, they're handsome, and they're doing the work in the community to uplift the community. So it
right.
was really kind of important that we honor them, and I was so grateful that they said yes and acknowledge the great work that they're doing.
And then in the arts, you have folks in the arts
Yes.
you honored.
Yeah, so then the other couple, I'll stay with the couples first, and then we'll
Yeah,
go to
okay. Yeah, yeah.
the singles. So the other couple that we honored is Jason Bolden and Adair Curtis. So Jason Bolden is a celebrity stylist, and he dresses everyone from Alicia Keys. Oh gosh, so many people. I'm just like trying to. Alicia and her husband Swizz. He Dwayne Wade, he dresses. Um, he has a huge list of people that he dresses. Janet Mock, all these luminary folks. And so Jason and Adair also had a show called Styling Hollywood on Netflix a few years ago, where they talked about kind of what it means to build a business together, what it means to build a family together, and what it means to build a relationship together. And so since then, they have a baby boy named Arrow Fox, their son, who they love on. And then Adair has built out his interior design company. And then they have a consulting business where they do creative direction and interiors and all this stuff. And so it's great to honor them because they were kind of like the first Black gay couple to be on like a major show on Netflix
Right.
and to be out and proud and normalize our existence in love. So had to honor them. The other couple was Elegance Bratton and his partner Chester Arginal. Now, what's interesting about Elegance is Elegance used to be in the ballroom scene. He used to be homeless. He joined the Marines, and he had this story inside of him. And so his husband, Chester, who's one of the producers of the film, The Inspection, encouraged Elegance to tell his story, which turned into this film, The Inspection, starring Jeremy Pope and Gabrielle Union, about his struggles being kicked out of the house by his mom, who didn't accept him, being homeless, and then joining the Marines to get his mother's favor and love back, only to, spoiler alert, not get it. And it's a really powerful story. It should have been an Oscar contender. And I want to talk about that part. It should have been an Oscar contender. The film should have been nominated. Jeremy Pope's performance should have been nominated. Gabrielle should have been nominated. They weren't. So that's the other service of Native Son, right? Mainstream doesn't see you. So we're going to honor you.
That's right. That's right. And proudly honor. And as you are building momentum, more and more people are aware of Native Son.
Right.
And you've got corporations that are supporting you
Right.
because of all of your work in
Yes.
the space of celebrity and Hollywood, et cetera. There's real awareness, which counts for so much. And I say that too, Emil, because one of the struggles
Mhm.
that exists in the Black community, right, wrong, whatever it is, we create awards events, we create ways of celebrating our own, and often those awards are dismissed. Oh, whatever, that was just
Mhm.
some little Black thing.
Right.
I mean, I hate
Right.
it, but that's often the case, and that is
Right.
not how you position Native Son, and I think it is gaining
Mm.
momentum in a way that it's garnering respect,
Right.
which
Right.
is super important. What is your
Yeah.
vision for Native Son as you look to the horizon?
So the vision for Native Son is really, again, amplifying our voice and visibility, right, in the world. Because as we do that, my vision is that we are strengthening the community, we're healing the community. Native Son to me is really being built for the future. It's really kind of ensuring that the next generations of Black, gay, and queer men and folks will be able to go here to Native Son and read and see video and see all these different things that will inspire them, make them feel whole and confident to know that they stand on the shoulders of immense giants who've had huge impact on culture, on politics, on medical, on everything, right? And so we're going to launch a content platform that
Right?
we will tell the stories from written pieces to video to fashion to photography to podcasts to web series because Native Son is named after James Baldwin's Notes of a Native Son. And we have a legacy in our community from an Alvin Ailey to Joseph Beam and Essex Hemphill to Marlon Riggs of telling stories. We are storytellers. So we are going to use this platform to tell the stories and create an archive.
And when does this platform launch?
It launches in the fall. I'm very, very excited.
This that's incredible because that it takes a lot to get from point A to point B and garnering tremendous support along the way. I mean, when people make things and the Dreamleapers is all about having that
I
dream.
listen. I leapt.
What a leap, and it's a continuous leap. That
Mhm.
includes courage. So before we go, I want you to talk
Yes.
about what courage and resilience and these are things that I see in you. What
Mm.
do you feel? Like what is it in you that keeps you moving forward?
Honestly, it is telling the stories that haven't been told, advocating for people who are voiceless and marginalized. That is really the power of what drives me. I keep referencing Pastor Mike, but he talks about honoring and the assignment, right? And so I often think I have to honor the assignment. And so I think really about having faith that you can do the things. But I see a world for us that is liberated, that is free, that is bigger than what we are. And I just want my community to be that.
And you said something a few times, and I just love the language of it because it's
Mm.
very much rooted in the Black community that when we have people who love on us,
Yes.
that's our language. That is our
Yes.
language, and
Loving on us.
it
Yeah.
means something. And I would be remiss if we didn't talk for a moment about your mama. And
Mm.
I'll preface this because I mean I know your mother was larger than life for you, and you just wrote a beautiful story about her. My mother, who thank God is still with us, she's 93, and she
Wow.
still puts on that red lipstick, honey, and gives that that Colgate smile, and it's
Mhm.
everything. And I find myself quoting her all the time in
Mhm.
everything that I do because I don't know what it would be without her. And I believe
Mhm.
that in part you are able to be as fortified as you are because of that powerful woman who
Yes.
guided you and who still guides you, even though she's on the other side. Tell us
Mhm.
about your
I mean, my mother was just a force to be reckoned with. And, I guess to answer your question, now that you're talking about my mother is the reason I keep going, right?
mom.
Because I was raised in a family that was about bettering our community, being of service, giving back. But she loved everything fabulous. So I was like, why not have a fabulous awards event where everyone is dressed fabulous, but we are raising money, right, for our community, and we are also making ourselves better, right? We are healing, we are giving testimony, we are inspiring and hugging and loving up on each other. So much of that inspiration comes from the woman who raised me, who, was a prolific in music, a master quilter, a lawyer, all the things.
And what's her name?
Dr. Cleota P. Wilbekin.
And where can we read this fabulous story that you wrote about her?
So I wrote a piece for Vogue magazine. So it's on Vogue.com. If you look up Emil Wilbekin's mother, it'll come up.
Right
And
there.
listen, so yes, she is a huge inspiration. And many people have said Friday night, she was smiling, looking down on the
Oh,
Native
yeah.
Son Awards. And also her death gave me a deeper meaning for what Native Son means.
How so?
She died 2 weeks before the second Native Son Awards, and I wanted to cancel. And my friend said, "Your mother wouldn't want you to cancel." And I literally went on and did it. And it was deeply healing and deeply important to keep moving forward.
Oh, beautiful. And how can people learn more about Native Son?
So Native Son on Instagram, it's at Native Son Now, and it's at Native Son Now across all social platforms. And then our website, nativeson.us, you can sign up for our newsletters, you can donate to Native Son and find out more information. But please share the word.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you always. It's wonderful to talk to you, and I'm proud of you. Congratulations on the most recent Native Son Awards for bringing these stories to life. And can people on nativeson.us are the stories of the winners on the website?
So the stories we're going to stream the awards in 2 weeks
Oh,
on Facebook and YouTube. And so that information will be on our social channels and we will share that with everybody.
excellent. Sounds good. Well, we'll let people know too. Thank you, Emil Wilbekin, creator of Native Son, and so many other incredible things. I appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, Harriet, for having me.
I'm so glad you all could tune in to this episode of Dreamleapers with Harriet Cole. I hope it makes you go out there and leap into your dreams right now, because Emil is doing it, has been doing it for all the years that I've known him. When I talk to him, it makes me want to get up and do more. I hope it does the same for you. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.